Hello and welcome to another episode of the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be talking about Alien from 1979, directed by Ridley Scott. And this is one of my favorite horror films of all time. Favorite horror films and favorite science fiction films, in one. This movie is just... It's done so well, and I cannot say enough good things about it. It's one that I've just really been looking forward to talking about and just checking off my list. And I've really kind of been trying to decide, because I've sort of been going back through some of the Predator films recently. And I was trying to decide whether or not I wanted to talk about Predator first or Alien, and then of course converge with Alien versus Predator. But I really figured, Alien being my favorite franchise of the two, and one of my favorite franchises of all time, it was only fitting to go ahead and knock out Alien. And this is one of those films that is just absolutely, without a doubt, it really, to me, stands the test of time and will always be great. And I love, all the Alien sequels. I mean, there's a couple of them that are just kind of meh, to be honest with you, but they're still good. Like, I still enjoy them. And I look forward to covering all of them. And, since I'm on the topic of sequels, I want to say another thing, in my defense of, Alien being one of my favorite franchises. Aliens, the sequel to this film, is not only, in my opinion, the best sequel of the Alien franchise, it is one of the best sequels of all time. It's amazing. Like, it builds so well off of what the first movie establishes, and it's fantastic. That one I really can't wait to talk about. So, like I said, this movie was directed by the great Ridley Scott. He did such a fantastic job on this movie, and this movie was originally supposed to be sort of like a Roger Corman-esque type of film, like a cheesy sort of sci-fi kind of movie. It was originally titled Star Beast, was the kind of the working title, if that kind of tells you anything. And I think another title was Memory. And a movie that I could kind of compare it to, like if you want a sort of an idea of what it would have been, watch the movie The Terror Within, which I love that movie. I absolutely love that to death. But this movie is far, far superior. And there are several other Alien ripoffs, but that's just the one that always comes to mind because it follows the plot of Alien very closely. This movie was written by Dan O'Bannon, and I think that was kind of the idea that he had in mind. And I feel bad because I think Dan O'Bannon was kind of over what's the word for it? He was kind of overshadowed because I think his original script was kind of tampered with and everything, but he still got to put his name on the script, and he's still kind of given that credit. But I don't think that he gets enough credit for writing this movie. And of course, Dan O'Bannon worked with John Carpenter on Dark Star, which Dark Star was kind of, I think I mentioned this in my John Carpenter video that I did here a while back. Dark Star was kind of the precursor to Alien. So a lot of the ideas from Alien were kind of turned into... a lot of the ideas from Dark Star were kind of reworked and became Alien as we know it now. And then, of course, like I said, this film had a huge budget behind it, and it was basically a slasher film set in space. So this film, of course, takes place in the future. I can't remember the exact year exactly. It's far off into the future when interstellar travel is very possible. But where this movie kind of was distinct was that this movie really kind of took the sort of Star Wars approach, where everything felt more kind of... I know that Star Wars is a fantasy, but it has a lot, sort of a very realistic kind of feel to it. Like all the ships and all the technology feels very used and very lived in, versus something like Star Trek, where everything was kind of stark and clean. And I'm not a huge Star Trek fan by any means, but that was kind of the sort of the stark, kind of clean, futuristic kind of feel to it. And whereas this really felt real, it felt like something that could be very plausible. And I've heard it compared to, a lot of people say, it's like Truckers in Space. It is the kind of what I've heard it kind of described as. So it's basically, like I said, truckers in space, and it has a lot of slasher elements. That's sort of the formula that this movie uses. It has a body count, it's got a lot of kills, and it has a central kind of unstoppable killer, being the xenomorph, which I will talk more about the design of the xenomorph here in just a little bit. So before I get too far into this, I do want to mention, I usually like to read the plot synopsis off the back of this, off of the back of my DVDs, but this one doesn't have it because the one that I have here in my hand is the Alien Quadrilogy. It's the DVD that I don't remember when this came out. I've had it since it came out. Like, I remember I got it for Christmas because when I knew it came out, I wanted it so bad. Like, I remember I just begged my mom for it, and that's what I wanted, for Christmas that year, and I got it for Christmas. Now I have the slim box set, which I actually prefer this one. They do have a big box version of this, which you can actually get really cheap. I've honestly considered picking up the big box just to have on the shelf because I've always wanted it. But this slim box, it fits really nicely. It holds all the films in it, and like I said, if you can get your hands on this because it's so reasonably priced, I highly recommend it. Now you only get the first 4 films, so you get Alien, Aliens, Alien 3, and Alien Resurrection. So of course you don't get the other ones that would come down the line. But, if you just need to pick up those first 4 films, this is the way to do it, because this set is loaded with special features. I mean, like I said, it's the first 4 films, but it's 9 disc. So not only do you get the theatrical cut as well as the special edition of each film, which I don't think Resurrection has a special edition, if I remember incorrectly, or if I remember correctly, I should say. But I know that Aliens, the special edition for Aliens is the definitive way to watch this movie, and Alien 3, I prefer watching the special edition of that film personally, which I think some people share that opinion, which Alien 3 kind of gets a bad reputation, and I don't understand why. Again, I'll talk more about that another time. I'm getting sidetracked. But each film has its own disc of special features, and it's just got hours and hours of, documentaries, still photos, behind the scenes stuff, just all kinds of interviews with Ridley Scott and H.R. Giger, and it's just got this is one of the greatest box sets, I personally think, DVD box sets to ever be released. If you're a super fan of something and you love special features, because they load you down with special features. Now, there is a Blu-ray version of this. I don't know if it comes with all the special features that's on this one, but I know that this one, I have such a fond memory of getting this DVD set, for Christmas years ago, and just nerding out on Alien like that weekend, like just go watching all the documentaries. Not all of them, because there's just hours of them, but just watching as many as I could, watching all the films, and just really deep diving into this box set. And it's still to this day one of my favorite box sets that I own. Like, anytime I have somebody ask me, what is one of my favorite, acquisitions, I guess, on DVD, this is one that I always, go back to. Love this movie, or I love this box set, and I love this movie. So I can't really read a plot synopsis, so I'll just kind of talk a little bit about it. And again, I'm not going to go too in depth, because I'm sure everyone has seen Alien. If you have not seen Alien, what are you doing? Go out and watch this movie now. Turn this video off, go watch it, and come back, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to kind of show our appreciation for this film. So, like I said, this movie came out in 1979. It has a very small cast of characters, which is one thing that I really like about this, because we really get to know our entire cast pretty well. And another thing I'll mention about this is, I like the fact that this cast, it was written so that, they were neither really male nor female, from what I remember. It was really kind of, it was all last names. So, anybody could really play anybody, as far as whenever they were doing the auditions and stuff. So the cast includes Sigourney Weaver, and it's actually a really big name cast, especially now. Like, a lot of these actors went on to be huge names in the industry. But of course, we get Sigourney Weaver, who plays Ripley. Tom Skerritt plays Dallas. Veronica Cartwright plays Lambert. John Hurt plays Kane. Ian Holm plays Ash. Harry Dean Stanton plays Brett. And Yaphet Kotto plays Parker. And then, of course, the Xenomorph is played by, I hope I don't say his name wrong, but Balashi Badejo, I think is how you say his name. He plays he is in the Xenomorph suit in this film. And, everybody just does a great job. The actors are all just acting their asses off. I mean, everyone is doing a fantastic job in this movie. And so this movie, basically it starts out, again, like I said, we're in the future, and we are introduced to the Nostromo. And the Nostromo is a mining ship. I don't know exactly what they're mining. I think it says like mineral ore or something like that at the very beginning of the film. And the crew is in hypersleep, and they are woken up out of nowhere because they receive a distress signal coming from a planet. LV-426 is the name of the planet, and so they are contractually obligated to investigate the distress signal. So they land on this planet, and this is one thing that I kind of want to touch on, is just the set design in this movie. Is just amazing. Like, I mean, everything just looks fantastic. Talking about the ship just looks great, and I mean, again, it has that very lived-in, kind of dirty, greasy feel, like where you feel like this ship has been used a lot, and the crew is very familiar with it, and you get the sense that it is absolutely lived in, and that these people actually live on this ship. The set design was done so well, and then of course when we get to the planet, I love this scene on LV-426. Just everything, it just feels fantastic, and it really does feel like an alien world. And the set, especially on the planet, is all miniatures. The ship, of course, is an actual set, but the planet set is miniatures. And they encounter this massive crashed derelict spaceship on this planet. And I love this idea because, again, it makes the universe just feel vast. I mean, it makes the universe feel massive. And again, this was also this was a miniature, and it looks fantastic. I love miniatures. Love the use of miniatures. The idea of this derelict ship where they find this mummified pilot on this ship, that's definitely been there for hundreds of, if not thousands of years, and is just petrified now at this point, who is dead, and he has there is a burst open cavity in his chest, which is foreshadowing for later, of course. Again, that just makes the whole, it makes even me watching this film, it makes me feel so small, because again, they are transporting their cargo, which we'll find out later, and it's like, but where were they taking this cargo, and what is this race, and what, again, it brings up so many questions, just that one small little tidbit of information that we get in this. And of course, unfortunately, it was kind of ruined because it was over-explained in one of the later sequels / prequels, which I'll talk about whenever I get to that. I still like that movie. I'm not gonna, I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about if you're familiar with this franchise, but we will talk about that when we get there. But just like I said, this just it just makes you ask so many questions, and it's done so well. And pretty much when they get on this derelict ship, Kane, John Hurt's character, he finds this room just filled with eggs, and the eggs are really designed really well. They look really cool, and he comes up on one of the eggs, and the egg opens up, and he gets a little too close, and a face hugger, which is the first evolutionary piece of the xenomorph life cycle, pops out and clings to his face, and he is unconscious, and he is carried back to the ship. And of course, they don't want to let him back on. Sigourney Weaver does not want to let him back on because, of course, it would break the quarantine protocols. So she's trying to stick around and stick to the quarantine thing. And so ultimately, they let them on the ship. which is a bad idea. It was a mistake. They should have listened to Ripley. So when they get him on the ship, they attempt to take the facehugger off, which the facehugger was designed so well. And that's something I want to touch on a little bit too while I'm thinking about it, is all the alien stuff was designed by H.R. Giger, and he did such a fantastic job. All of his artwork is fantastic as well, and they chose him to design all of the alien elements. And the alien itself, I'll talk more about it when we get there, but everything having to do with the alien side of things, the xenomorph side of things, I should say, is just done so well. I mean, it's excellent, and I mean, and it's perfect. I mean, for this film, and it works so well for the plot, and just, oh my god! I mean, they could not have chosen a better person to design all this stuff. Fantastic. I mean, just amazing. So they, like I said, they attempt to get this creature off of Kane. They attempt to get it off of his face, and that's when we learn that if they just try to pry it off, it will strangle him to death. And if they try to cut it off, of course, it has acid for blood, and it will burn through the hull. So they decide to just leave it on, and they're going to put Kane in cryo sleep until they get back home. So, and in the meantime, I mean, it's feeding him oxygen, it's keeping him alive. So they don't really have, anything to go off of with that until Kane wakes up mysteriously. The creature falls off, and Kane seems normal. I mean, he seems perfectly fine. He says he has a nightmare about smothering, but that's all he really has to say. And they're sitting down to eat dinner, and then Kane begins to cough, and he kind of has this he sort of has a seizure, and they throw him up on the table, and his chest explodes, and we get the chest burster phase of the cycle. And I couldn't imagine seeing this for the first time, in 1979. Like, I remember how shocking it was for me to see it for the first time. I mean, it blew my fucking mind, and it was so graphic. Like, I was like, oh my, like, whenever I saw this when I was really young, it was so graphic. I just remember how impactful it was and how brutal that was. And it feels so gross. I mean, just the thought of something growing and gestating inside of you, because that's also kind of a horrifying concept, especially for the time. So anyway, the creature comes out of Kane. It's Kane's baby, and it runs off, and they lose track of it, and they're like, "Oh shit! This is not good. This is really bad." And so they go to hunt down the creature, and we get a lot of really cool shots, kind of around the ship, and they think that they're looking for this tiny little worm-like critter, this penis-looking creature, because it looks very phallic. When Harry Dean Stanton's character comes across a shed skin, and that's when he, this is another really cool scene whenever he's in the room with all the chains, and the xenomorph blends in so well to the environment, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it grabs him and takes him up into the top of the ship, and he's gone. I mean, just like that, he's out of there. And I love the way that Yaphet Kotto, his character, describes this. Is he's just like, it was big. Like, I don't know, he was there, and then he was gone. Just the way that he describes this is fantastic. And I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the design of the xenomorph. So I personally think that the xenomorph is one of the most perfectly designed creatures. Even Ash says it in the film, it's the perfect organism, and just the design of the xenomorph is so great. I mean, I love the look of this xenomorph, in this film, with the kind of glass dome where you can sort of kind of see the skull a little bit, under the glass dome. But it doesn't have eyes, and it's very long and lanky, and has the long tail and the 6 fingers on the hand, and it's very humanoid, but not, and I think that's just, it was, again, just such a perfect design, excellent excellent creature design. And having said that, one thing I really like about this is that they don't show the xenomorph a lot. Like, you really don't see it very clearly, at least not until the end. Like, it's very obscured in shadows, and you only see pieces of it kind of here and there. And I love that. They follow the whole rule, don't show your monster too early, don't give it away too soon. And I love that. I love that it's very obscured and it's just kind of lurking around the ship. And it blends in with the environment so well. I mean, not even just the alien environments, but the environments on the ship. I mean, it blends in just perfectly. And, again, just such an amazing monster design. I love the design of the xenomorph. It was done just to perfection. So, anyway, going from that, they basically have to hunt this thing down, as they go throughout the ship. And one scene that I think is really impactful is when Tom Skerritt, Dallas, whenever his character is killed. It's really sort of a Janet Leigh moment from Psycho, where, you kind of think he's going to be sort of your lead guy. And whenever he is killed, that's really kind of a shocking moment, because you really think he's sort of going to be the hero, and he's kind of crawling around in the vents and they're tracking the xenomorph. And it's such a stressful scene. Like, I mean, it's so creepy, because, they know that it's coming after him, and they know it's coming this way, and they're telling him, go down or go to the right, it's coming this way. And it's so stressful. I love that whole scene is just done so well. And so, like I said, Dallas is taken. And of course, at this moment, this is kind of when Sigourney Weaver kind of takes over, and she sort of becomes the acting captain, I guess, in this. And that's one thing that this movie, I think, is really cool, because, of course, we've gotten the final girl trope has kind of been established by this point. But this is one thing that this film does differently, and does it even more in the sequel. But it turns the final girl into not just a final, surviving victim, but turns her into a badass. She ultimately destroys the xenomorph and faces it, and it's just something that this movie does really great. And I really like that about this film. We get to the point where we find out that the corporation that they work for, Weyland-Yutani, they were actually sent out there by this corporation to investigate this signal, because they knew about the alien and they wanted to pick up the alien. And that is whenever we get another really cool twist, is that Ash is actually an android, and he tries to kill Ripley. And it's such a spooky scene. Just the thought of, this, he's been an android this whole time, and he's kind of hiding, amongst the group, and they had no idea. And the way he tries to kill her too is really creepy. How he tries to just kind of shove a magazine down his throat, down Sigourney Weaver's throat. It's so odd. And of course, they kill Ash, and Ash kind of gives them all the exposition of kind of what the thing is. And honestly, this is really one of the only effects that looks bad in this movie, if I'm being honest with you, is the whole kind of whenever they have the false head of Ash on the table. Part of it is actually Ian Holmes' head, kind of through a hole in the table. But when it's not, it does look kind of goofy. So that's really kind of the only scene that I can say that looks goofy. That, and a scene at the end, which I'll mention. But other than that, all the effects are done very, very well. So anyway, Ash is killed, and they find out that they are the crew is expendable. Is one thing that the computer tells them. Mother, the computer that they talk to, says that the crew is expendable, and so they decide, they're like, well, fuck this. Let's blow up this ship. And that's what Sigourney Weaver decides to do. And of course, the other surviving members of the crew are killed off, and she sets the ship into self-destruct mode, and she gets into the escape pod and decides to leave. And she is, she escapes. And as she's in the pod, she is out there, and she watches the ship explode as she's flying away. And that's a great scene. It looks amazing. And, you think she's won, she's done. She even says, I got you, you son of a bitch. Like, I love that line. But as she is stripping down and getting ready to go into cryo sleep with Jonesy, I forgot to mention Jonesy. You know, they have a cat named Jonesy, and he'll come up in another one of these reviews that I do. But she's got, she rescued Jonesy from the ship blowing up, so he survives, which I'm glad. So when she's there, before she goes into the cryo sleep, she realizes that the xenomorph is on board of the escape pod. And so now she has to figure out what to do about that. So she puts on one of the spacesuits in the escape pod, and she blows it out of the goddamn airlock, as she says. And this is the other scene I was talking about that looks kind of goofy, where the xenomorph is outside of the ship. And of course, this is the only time in the movie where you can really tell it's a guy in a suit. And I have nothing against guys in suits, like, at all. And I think that the guy who was playing the xenomorph does an excellent job in this movie. But this is the only time we really see the xenomorph fully. Like, we see it completely, its entire body, and it's the only time that it actually doesn't look the best in this movie, but it's still fine. Again, it's not really a problem. It's just something that that I figured I would mention. And of course, she hits the thrusters on the escape pod, and it burns the xenomorph up, and the xenomorph is done. The xenomorph is dead, and it's gone. And she gives her sign-off log before she goes into cryo sleep, and she goes into the cryopod with Jonesy, and we roll credits. And that is Alien from 1979. Like I said, this movie is done so well. Such a great film. I can't recommend it enough. Again, one of my favorite franchises of all time, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Excellent creature design, excellent set design. I mean, this movie was just firing off on all cylinders. Had an excellent crew, excellent cast, excellent, everything. I mean, everything was just done so well. This movie is a masterpiece. I don't care what anybody says. This is a great film, and it is a must watch for any horror fan. And like I said, if you are a fan of the Alien franchise, I highly recommend picking up this Alien quadrilogy, especially if you're interested in how they did a lot of the effects. I'm really glad to have gotten to talk about this movie. I do plan to talk about the Predator franchise down the line, because I do love the Predator films as well. But there's just a lot more of the Alien films that I enjoy. And again, we'll touch on that. They're not all perfect. This is definitely the standout. I'm really looking forward to talking about Aliens, because that sequel is perfect in my opinion. I think it was an excellent follow-up to this film. So I'll probably be talking about that one pretty soon. But in my next review to come out, it's probably going to be another one of my favorite franchises. Thank you for watching this or listening to this review. I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next episode. And as always, have a great night and goodbye.